Now, much attention has been focused on an incident prior to President Obama's attendance at the recent Summit of the Americas in Cartagena, Colombia. I have spoken a number of times with Secret Service Director Sullivan about this. In fact, we met privately for about an hour yesterday, and we've probably been on the phone half a dozen or a dozen times. I've known the director from the times when he was an agent. I knew him when President Bush appointed him as director of the Secret Service and when President Obama reappointed him. I know that he shares my view that the alleged conduct was unacceptable. I think he's doing all he can to ensure a timely and thorough investigation and accountability for behavior that failed to meet the standards he expects, and certainly the standards that the President of the United States and the American people deserve. He's taken action on 12 agents who have been claimed to have been involved in misconduct. And last week, I arranged for a bipartisan briefing for Judiciary Committee staff, Republican and Democratic, with the Secret Service and officials of the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General. And I've asked the director to ensure he's available to members of this committee as the investigation continues. He assured me he will be, and that he will make sure that we know exactly when they finish the investigation, everything they found. Now, and I have no doubt you're treating this situation with equal seriousness. Certainly my conversations with you, you've talked a great deal with the director during this time. Nobody wants to see the president's security compromised. Nobody wants to see America embarrassed. As I told you, with our jurisdiction over the U.S. Secret Service, we did want to ask you some questions there. I am, of course, like all Americans, concerned about the safety of our president, whether it could have been jeopardized by this kind of behavior, just as I'm concerned about the safety of any of the protectees. I mentioned Governor Romney, but there are several others. The misconduct we've heard about, did that pose any risk to the president's security when in Colombia or to national security?
Mr. Chairman, that was my first question to Director Sullivan when he called me, and the answer is no. There was no risk to the president.
And you made that assessment?
Yes, based on the information supplied to me by the director.
And is the Secret Service coordinating its internal investigation with the Department of Defense or any other U.S. agency that might have been involved in Cartagena preparing for the president's arrival?
Mr. Chairman, we are coordinating the investigation with the Inspector General. We have an existing MOA with the IG, between the Secret Service and the IG, so they are, in effect, supervising the investigation, even though it's being done by Secret Service agents.
And was there any evidence that the president's advance team was involved in this misconduct?
I've not been informed of any such evidence.
Thank you. And as we continue to look at this, I mean, we know the agents are trained as to what is acceptable and what's unacceptable. Are there standards in place governing appropriate conduct for agents on foreign trips and how they may interact with locals when they're on foreign assignments? And if there are such standards, how are they conveyed to the agents?
There are standards. They are conveyed through training and through supervision. But one of the things we are doing, Mr. Chairman, is looking at the standards, the training, the supervision, to see what, if anything, needs to be tightened up, because, again, we don't want this to be repeated.
Well, is there training given to agents relating to private or intimate contact with foreign nationals when traveling for security work?
The training is focused on professionalism, on conduct consistent with the highest moral values and standards, and I think that would include your question.
Well, Madam Secretary, I know that when we travel, when members of Congress travel to different countries we go to, we're given security and foreign intelligence threat advisories. I've been in some countries where, for example, we'll leave all our communication gear dismantled with U.S. security officers and so forth. Our agents given training in security and foreign intelligence threats for a particular country they might go into.
I think that's part of the advanced process, Mr. Chairman.
So if they thought there was an intelligence threat in a particular country, they'd be advised of that.
Yes, yes.
And I began my career here during the Cold War period, and we had some of the assessments we were given them are somewhat different than they are today, but then some of the assessments today, because of our increased types of communication gear and electronic gear are different. I assume that is geared based on today's real threats.
Yeah. How to secure, you mean how to secure our communications equipment and the other
And
types
what
of...
things that an individual must have to look for is, I mean, is this a country, are they going to be a threat from agents of another country?
The agents are informed as to what the intel is, what specific or country-specific measures need to be taken. And again, in this instance, Mr. Chairman, there was no impinging on the security of the president and no access to any secure information by the people involved.
You know, like you, I've been on many occasions with the Secret Service around, watched very professional men and women. I've traveled with several different presidents over the course of my career, watched the Secret Service, again, with very professional men and women there. So that when I heard the number of the agents involved in this, I found it particularly alarming when I got my first call at home from the director, and then as my staff looked into it, and the bipartisan staff of the committee looked into it, the numbers I found shocking. To your knowledge, is this the first time something like this has happened, or have you had reports of similar incidences in the past?
Mr. Chairman, I asked the same question, and over the past 2.5 years, the Secret Service Office of Professional Responsibility has not received any such complaint. Over that same period, the Secret Service has provided protection to over 900 foreign trips and over 13,000 domestic trips. So from that standpoint, there was nothing in the record to suggest that this behavior would happen, and it really was, I think, a huge disappointment to the men and women of the Secret Service to begin with, who uphold very high standards and who feel their own reputations are now besmirched by the actions of a few.
Well, and to the extent that any of them are listening to this hearing, I would hope they will not be distracted from their job. Those who are protecting Governor Romney, those who are protecting President Obama, and all the other protectees.